Hey guys, it's Tombox here coming at you with a Metacall video for June 12th. Now, this is actually backed up by the data from MST Open Series number 5. I have like a lot of deck lists, oh my god, deck lists, and a binder full of tournament matches and who's actually been performing well. This whole binder is full of it. There's actually a second binder, but yeah, so this is going to be backed up with data. I know that MST Open Series 5 isn't exactly the largest data sample, but it will provide us with a bit of insight. And there's 3 cards that really stuck out in this tournament, and a lot of the top players did play these cards. So I will be sharing this information with you guys, and hopefully you guys can share some of your insight towards what's really good in June 12th. Let me just clarify one thing before I start, is that the meta-relevant decks at MOS 5 would be, well, 90% Zoodiac, there's True Draco Zoo, Demise True Draco, True King Dinos, there's also Paleos, and the surprising underdog of Wind Witch Artifact Invoked. These are really powerful stuff, and I actually have to shout out to Pendulum Zoo. Didn't think to see that, but that was a very powerful deck as well. Too bad it bubbled out. And surprisingly, another deck that did bubble out would be the Phantasm Spiral deck. That deck went X2 on the bubble and actually lost to a pair down. Let's go back into the very first card. The very first card that I've noticed that a lot of these people did play was Ghost Reaper Winter Cherries, not Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom actually isn't as useful, especially if you consider that 90% of the meta in a tournament would be Zoodiac, and now that you don't have Fusion sub combo, it is really lacking targets to hit. You can hit a Broad Bowl, you can ideally you hit the Barrage. I'm not talking about True Draco Zoo. Against True Draco Zoo, Ash is still one of the best cards. Side it back in. But most people only ran 2 copies of Ash Blossom because, well, she's not very good. But instead, I've seen people run 3 copies of Reaper Winter Cherries instead in the main deck. And I guess it's a good meta call to actually do this, because taking away Trident or Broad Bowl could secure you the game. I mean, honestly, if you think about it, what's so scary about a Zoodiac board? And what's so scary about a Zoodiac deck in general? Well, the scary thing is, Trident provides you with really, really amazing control over your opponent's turn, or it's Broad Bowl being able to fetch you recovery plays or direct your plays in a certain line that gives you a high level of consistency of reaching certain plays. And basically those 2 cards dictate most of the deck. Leica will give you extension on your plays, Hammer Kong will do the targeting, but honestly just thrown under a bus half the time, same with Boarbow. Tiger Mortar will give you the flexibility of reusing stuff in your graveyard. That's what really makes it really scary. But the finishing board, what makes it scary is the Trident. Trident is a scary part, and the Broad Bowl, the start and the finish. These are the 2 cards. So if you use Reaper Winter Cherries on the Trident, that means on your turn, you have nothing really to fear except for maybe the trap back row. Maybe it's a Solemn Strike, maybe it's a D-Barrier. But even if you do get D-Buried, are you actually going to die? Well, if they manage to bring out really big beat sticks on you through the effect of Broad Bowl, then yeah, maybe you could die. But let's be honest, the extra deck of a Zoodiac deck is usually filled with guys with no attack. And as for if you actually hit away the Broad Bowl, if you went first and somehow you still managed to land a Reaper Winter Cherries, say you only start off with a Trident because you didn't really go too far and your opponent decided to go off on you, puts out 2 monsters, thanks to, say, they use their rat effect to kind of go off and you decide not to pop them, well, you rip away the Broad Bowl, and yeah, problem solved. They can go into a Trident, but who cares about that, because they cannot win the grind game anymore. If you plan on grinding out against your opponent, you hit their Broad Bowl. And I guess you can decide whether or not, if you're going first or second, which one do you choose to hit. I mean, you don't always win the die roll, of course. And the moment you actually take away, like, Trident, let's go back to Trident here. If you take away Trident, their boards aren't really that threatening. And if you play Kaijus and you put the Kaijus on board, the fat kaiju that you have on your side of the field, they have to use board wipes to clear them, or they have to swing into it with like a Whiptail, or they have to run Mirror Force, maybe Torrential. And Torrential was also a very frequently played card in the, well, at the tournament, and this is like, of course, again, June 12th format. So this card, being at $12, Ghost Reaper Winter Cherries can help you direct and cripple a Zoodiac player. Would you play it over Ash Blossom? I personally think it's a really good choice, especially if you're going to do a meta call. If you think that a tournament's going to be 90% Zoo well then you can obviously use it against them in the very first game, and that hurts them a lot. Some people just aren't very flexible of what they can do with the deck. And what happens when your Dryden is actually hit? The play that people usually go into is they usually put a Hammer Kong beside a Ram Ram or a Laika, something like that, just to keep things alive. But yeah, that's the very first finding, and luckily this card is relatively cheap, much cheaper than Ash Blossom, so definitely consider it in your main deck. The second card that I saw that was probably one of the most useful cards to snatch victory out of your opponent's hands, basically ripped it right out, is My Body as a Shield. This card, the best decks basically ran 3 copies of this, and definitely more powerful than Chalice. And it is also a very flexible card. Let's go through the uses of this card in the upcoming format. Because Ghost Ogre is going to be a very dominant hand trap. Most people run 3 copies of Ghost Ogre. This will protect your monsters from getting Ghost Ogre, especially your very first rat. You use rat, you activate the effect, and then dump it to the graveyard. Well, they're gonna ogre you right away because you only have 2 major summons per turn. If you're a Zoo player, if you're a Wind Witch player, they're gonna pop you when you try to use your, say, Winter Bell's effect to burn. Basically, you get that protection of your monster, and then you don't have to worry about any more Ghost Ogres in the future, since Ghost Ogre's use is only once per turn. It's a hard once per turn too. What else does it protect you with? First of all, it kills Dryden both on your turn and your opponent's turn. What I mean by your opponent's turn is, what is the Daigusto Emerald loop right now? If you normal summon a rat, you put a Ram Ram into the graveyard, you revive with Laika, and you pop it with a Dryden to get the Daigusto Emerald search, so you now have a Dryden and Daigusto Emerald. Basically the old school rat combo, but it does require you to pop with a Dryden first. But since My Body as a Shield doesn't give a crap of where it gets popped, well, you might as well use it to kill that Dryden, negate the effect, leaving the Ram Ram on the field, and now the board is free of a Dryden on your own turn. If you set that, you can bait that Dryden out. It's very good. And if your opponent's Dryden decide to do something else to try to pop your stuff, you can protect it. You also protect yourself against every single board wipe in the game. Every board wipe is now in the game. You got Double Dark Hole, you got the Raigeki, you got the Kaiju Slumber. And if you don't want to run Ash, of course, this is one card that can negate that Slumber as well. So very useful, lets you play anti-board wipe and kills Dryden. And funny enough, it can also kill a Barrage. Now, Barrage popping Ram Ram is also a thing, so you can protect your opponent's Ram Ram by destroying their Barrage. So yeah, there's that too. So I definitely recommend this one over Chalice in the current moment anyway. And the third card that I saw a lot of play of would be Flying Sea. In fact, the whole Sea family is basically in town, from Retaliating Sea to Flying Sea. Now, Flying Sea, a lot of people actually chose to main deck this card just because expecting, if you're choosing to do a meta call on a certain tournament, you are choosing to main deck certain cards that you normally would not. And seeing that Zoodiacs do take 90% of the tournament, main decking this card isn't very wrong. Actually, I've seen some decks that are main decking about 15, 16 hand traps with all the Sea cards in there, and you got like your Reapers, your Ash, you got your Ogres. It's just like, it's hand trap deck, and it's good reason. Usually these decks are obviously Zoo decks because Zoodiacs only really need one card to actually go off, and you can have a handful of hand traps to actually prevent your opponent from actually even playing. So it does make sense. It's just like, oh, you brick because you get a handful of hand traps. Well, you can still unbrick by drawing one card, so it kind of pays off in the end. Now, Flying Sea is a good meta call because it prevents Xyz, and as we already talked about, Zoodiacs don't exactly establish really good boards without the access of their extra deck. They're relatively weak, they don't have effects, they're basically a bunch of vanillas that don't exactly do very much and doesn't exactly have much to offer as bodies on the field, maybe except for Ram Ram. Ram Ram's obviously one of the best monsters if it's by itself, but aside from that, they're not very good. If you throw that Flying Sea onto their side of the board, they're gonna have to answer it. I've actually seen some people answer that Flying Sea in a very smart way. If they decide to use their Ghost Ogre, their Ash Blossom, or their Ghost Reaper, they normal summon that and then they synchro into either a Bryanak or a Stardust Charge Warrior to get rid of that Flying Sea. And they proceeded to play out of that. So usually after a Barrage or something, they get a Flying Sea. And that's actually the best point to Flying Sea, of course, is that after you use the Barrage, you've already burned the Barrage that would have normally popped the Flying Sea. But instead, they go into the synchro into a Bryanak to actually blow away the rest of the board, forcing like Solemn Strikes and everything else to be used, because the moment that Brionac successfully bounces away the entire board, you can expect to at least take 23 worth of damage, along with the entire Zoodiac combo to actually successfully go off. So there's also that to play around too. But aside from that, don't use Flying Sea in every other matchup because there's no point using Flying Sea against True Draco Zoo. True Dracos, they just have enough pops and they have tribute monsters to actually, well, use your free card to get rid of it. Dinosaurs don't exactly care because they can pop it with Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, and Ultimate Conductor Tyranno is one of the most funny things I've seen over the weekend, along with Zolkin. Most of the Dino players did play Zolkin instead of going into VFD, and it's actually much safer. They go 9 pillars, Zolkin, Crystal Wing, plus a Suwani on the side. It's overall a very scary board that I've seen. Of course, Flying Sea, you can throw it against a Paleo player. They get a little annoyed for a bit because they can't go into the Totally Awesome, the Anomalocaris, they can't use Opabinia. You guys kind of get the idea. And I think Paleos, just because they're no longer like 60 card Paleo, doesn't mean that they're not strong. They're still a very scary deck. And anyways, that's all I got for this Metacall video. This is basically data that I collected from the top players, from these deck lists that I have been reading. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know down in the comment section below, what do you believe to be the meta? And what are your ways of actually fixing up your Zoodiac decks? What do you believe to be the strongest deck of the format? Let me know down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And until next time, I'm going to proceed to my end phase. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please drop us a like so we know we are doing a good job. And you can also subscribe to MST.TV for more fantastic videos by clicking on the button on the left. Don't forget to check out our partners at Imperium Duelist. They make really high quality mats, including some of my own limited edition release stuff. And if you want to check out one of our past videos, click here on the right. As always, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV, and I'll see you next time.